Well, it does look like most folks are in from the waiting room, so I will kick this off. Welcome to the info session for the diaper delivery RFP. Thanks for your interest in this procurement opportunity. It's brought to you by the Department of Community and Health Services. And my name is Libby Brockman. I use she and her pronouns, and I am the procurement lead, and I will walk you through this opportunity today and take questions at the end. We also have Luke, Quinn, and Tiffany here from our team, and they will help monitor the chat and answer any technical questions as we go. If you can, just start by putting your name and pronouns in the chat. That would be helpful. And I do want to let you know we are recording today. This session will be posted to Zoom Grants for anyone who might not be able to make it. And we have turned on the live transcript option. So if you want to click that button on the bottom, you can click the little arrow and select show subtitles. I will note that sometimes the subtitles are very tiny and very small, so you can go into the settings and make them a little bit bigger if the font is too small. Some other housekeeping tips, we ask that you type your questions in the chat, and I'll consolidate all questions and answers from today's session and post them to Zoom Grants afterwards as well. At the end, I'll invite folks to go and mute themselves, and you can ask questions that way as well. So just to give you a heads up of what we will be covering, we'll go over an overview of the diaper delivery RFP. We'll talk a little bit about eligibility, funding available, how to apply. I'll give you a sense of our timeline, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers. I know this was scheduled for an hour, but I don't think we'll take up all that time. So hopefully you'll get a little bit more time back in your day. So at DCHS, our overarching goal is to ensure that all people, regardless of who they are and where they live, have the opportunity to thrive with full and equal access to opportunities, power, and resources. So to that end, our goal with this RFP is to alleviate the basic needs of diapers for families impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that families across King County are facing economic hardships due to the pandemic, many job-related losses, and this is our goal to make diapers accessible and easily accessible. Our primary outcome is to provide diapers and increase distribution of diapers to families throughout all of King County. And I'll talk a little bit more about geographical reach in a moment, but our primary outcome is to have these diapers delivered and connected to families by the end of this year. So that means that awards for this RFP will be for 8 months of funding from May through December. I want to point out that successful applicants will be responsible for purchasing, storing, and distributing diapers to families within the county. And as I mentioned before, our goal with this RFP is really to reach all regions of King County. And so DCHS may award contracts to one awardee that can distribute diapers to all of King County, or to multiple awardees that collectively can distribute to all of King County. So for example, if one organization is serving North King County and one is serving South King County, together they may be funded so that the entire county would be reached. And when we think about who this RFP will serve, we're aiming to serve King County families and communities in need of diaper assistance due to the economic impact of COVID-19. And we encourage you to address historically disadvantaged communities that have been disproportionately impacted by inequities and discrimination in order to respond to the disproportionate health and economic impacts of COVID. So as our goal is to increase diaper distribution across all of King County, we're looking for organizations with one of two capacities: either to obtain and distribute diapers to families impacted by COVID-19 themselves, or those who might partner with community-based organizations who can then distribute diapers to their clients and families who have been impacted by COVID. So if you can ask yourself, one, do you distribute diapers directly to community members? Or two, do you partner with other community-based organizations by giving them diapers to distribute to their clients and community members? And if the answer to yes is yes to either of these questions, then this RFP may be for you. In terms of eligibility, Entities serving communities in King County who have been impacted by COVID-19 are eligible to apply. And this includes nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations, tribes and tribal organizations, public and governmental agencies as well. We really encourage small nonprofits and community-based organizations to apply and to submit proposals. And in general, eligible applicants must meet the following criteria. They must have experience procuring diapers at a large scale. They must be able to purchase and store diapers. And this includes access to warehouse and all the equipment used to move diapers and pallets and safety equipment, et cetera. We ask that applicants also have experience distributing diapers to families or connections to other groups who do distribute diapers or provide direct services and basic needs, such as food banks, schools, and community centers. And lastly, we ask that applicants with proposals that they will serve King County residents. I do want to point out too that there is a current King County executive order that exists that may require workers of county contractors to be vaccinated against COVID. And the thing I really want to convey and that I want people to understand here is that by checking the box in our application that asks about this, you are not stating that your organization is currently in compliance with this mandate, or that by checking the box, you're admitting or committing to the fact that the mandate may apply to your workers. But it's possible that you may get an award and your project or your organization may not be subject to this order, but we at the county need to include something in this process that shows you as a bidder are aware of this obligation, should you get an award and should it apply at some point down the road. There is a lot more information about this executive order in the RFP. We've included more information about it, an exact copy of the order, and it's also uploaded in Zoom grants for you to access later. In terms of funding, we have up to $400,000 available for this opportunity. And I just want to note that King County may award multiple awards, like I mentioned before, in terms of covering the entire county, but the number of awards and the amounts awarded will depend on how many applications and the amounts requested by applicants. So I hope this is helpful. The application will require all applicants to submit a budget and a budget narrative, and it will ask you how you plan to use those funds. So the 8 months of funding will be available for a total sum of $400,000 across the various awardees. So how to apply? We will be directing you to Zoom grants. It's an online application. You may be familiar with it. If you're not, we have lots of resources to support you. It is an online application that shows all of the materials that we have for you, as well as being a place where you can submit your proposal as well. If you take a look in the library tab, I'll walk you through this in just a moment, but all of the materials, the attachments, the RFPs, the FAQs that we'll be providing will be listed in the library tab for you. And I really just recommend that you check in on Zoom grants often and check out the announcements section, because this is where all the formal communication related to this RFP will be shared out. I've included as well the link, a direct link to the application here. Luke, if I could trouble you to put this in the chat at some point, that would be helpful. We'll make sure that you guys have a copy of this link before we close out today. All applications for this RFP will be due by March 3rd at 2 p.m. Pacific time. And any proposals that are late may not be accepted and may not be scored. So I really encourage you to get your proposals in by 2 p.m. on March 3rd. Again, here is the link. And if you haven't been in Zoom grants before, I just included a small snapshot of what it will look like. The green arrow here points out the library tab, and that will have all of the materials, PDFs, and instructions for you and resources there. I recommend that you read them all so you don't miss anything. The second set of tabs at the bottom are the main components of the actual application. There's 4 of them, and you can click them in any order at any time. The summary tab will include questions like your contact information and your organization information. The pre-application tab is the second pink arrow there, and that is where your organization will need to recognize the King County Executive Order requiring some contractors to be vaccinated. And just as a reminder, checking this box doesn't imply that you're currently in compliance with the mandate or that the mandate even applies to your workers. It just shows that you're aware of this obligation should you get an award and should it apply at some point down the road. The third and fourth tabs are really the meat of the application. The narrative questions tab has a set of long answer questions where you will get to share with us your proposal and tell us about your project. And the fourth tab listed here is the budget tab, and this is where you will fill out a budget and share with us your budget narrative. I know Zoom grants can be a little bit tricky sometimes. Here's like the 4 helpful tips and tricks that I kind of distilled down for you. I do want to point out that your work will autosave, so you don't need to fill out the application all at once. You can log in and out multiple times. Every time you click outside of a field, the page will save for you. I will note counterintuitively that if you sometimes see a green saving button on your screen, and if it's blinking for more than a few seconds, even though it says saving, sometimes Zoom grants has a bit of a catch and it's actually not saving. So I recommend at that point that you refresh your browser or that you get in touch with Zoom Grants U, which is in the second top right box on the screen. Zoom Grants U is a knowledge base for self-training and troubleshooting. It's system, it's free, you can access it whenever you want. Help is only a click away, and there's a help button at the top of your application that you can use to access that. Third, as I alluded to on the previous slide, Zoom Grants uses a tab system to separate the different pages and sections of your application. So you can click on any tab at any order and jump back and forth to the different sections of the application. And lastly, the check for completion feature from Zoom Grants will double check your application to ensure it's complete before you submit it. So if you forget to complete a field, it will tell you before you go ahead and submit. So you can make sure that your proposal is complete when you're ready to go and submit it. Zoom Grants does have a help desk, and I will give you some information, their email and their phone number at the end of this presentation. So if you do have like more technical questions, they're a really great resource. Just so you know kind of what the county does with applications after the applications are submitted. So you probably will click submit on March 3rd by 2 p.m. and take a big deep breath, and that's when our team will get to work. We will review all applications for eligibility, make sure all proposals are meet the eligibility requirements in the RFP. We'll then convene a panel of reviewers to read through each application, score them, and they will be using a very set and standard rubric for scoring each application so that each application is scored in the same way. There are 4 sections to that rubric. As you see here, capacity, experience, and approach is worth 10 points. The equity and social justice section is scored for 10 points, budget and fiscal, and data collection and evaluation. As you see here, each section is worth 10 points, but the first 2 sections are weighted more heavily, and they're weighted 4 times that 10. So in total, there's 100 points possible. And if you take a look in the RFP, I really recommend that you look at the expanded table of these criteria sections, and they will show you exactly how each section is scored. It can be really helpful when crafting your responses to the RFP. So after our reviewers take a look at all the proposals and they score them, we will meet as a team and discuss proposals. I do want to let you know that the goal is not for every reviewer to rate and score each proposal the same way, but really just to have a conversation and a shared understanding of what each application is actually proposing. So then if the panel needs more information, they may ask applicants to participate in an interview, and this would be scheduled at a mutually convenient time. We're probably looking at sometime in March if that does happen, but we would follow up with you later on. And then the panel will finalize scores after those interviews if they happen, or directly after a meeting, and we would bring our award recommendations to the department director, who will make the final decision based on equity and geography and community needs. And our goal is to make final award notifications to everyone by April. This is kind of the timeline that I just went through with you. There's two main deadlines and due dates on here that I want to point out. Again, this timeline is in your RFP, so you don't need to copy it down or scribble furiously as we go through it. I know there's a lot of dates here, but the two most important upcoming dates that I'll share with you is February 17th. That's the final day to submit questions via Zoom grants, and March 3rd at 2 p.m. is the actual due date for all proposals. Again, this timeline is included in the RFP, and you can find more details there. And as promised, here is many resources for you to obtain application help. First, I would recommend that you take a look at the library tab in Zoom Grants. And if you have technical questions, you can email Zoom Grants directly at questions@zoomgrants.com. They also have a phone number, and you can even submit a help ticket directly from their website when you are logged in. And if you have any questions not related to the technical components of applying for this RFP, but related to the content and program proposals, you can submit questions via Zoom Grants, or you can email me at libby.brockman@kingcounty.gov. And Luke, if I could trouble you to put my email in the chat, that would be helpful too. And just so you all know, the deadline for asking questions is February 17th, 2022. It's in about 3 weeks, and that will give us enough time to write up all of the answers to your questions, collect them, and then post them back to Zoom Grants so everyone has access to them. So I guess your next steps are to review the RFP in Zoom Grants, complete your proposal, and lastly, to submit your application by March 3rd at 2 p.m. If you do have questions, again, feel free to reach out to us. We have a bunch of time right now to take questions. You can unmute yourself or put your questions in the chat. I'll leave this slide up with my contact information while we take questions. And just so you know, because the RFP is currently live, please submit all questions via email to me or via Zoom Grants. I will collect them all, put them in an FAQ document, and upload them to Zoom Grants so that everyone gets all pertinent information. This also includes all questions from today and those questions that end up in the chat. I will put those together and get those up on Zoom Grants as well. So I think that's most of the prepared content that we have for you guys today. I'm really excited to see a lot of folks here, and I'm happy to take questions, and feel free to unmute yourself or put questions in the chat. Thanks so much.
I'm sorry, I could read the questions out loud, Libby.
Great, thank you.
So we have a question, is the amount allocated for each org based on the budget we propose in the application?
Good question. Yes, the amounts that will be awarded will be based on the proposals and the amounts included in the proposals. And if there are, really stellar applications for $400,000, the total amount from multiple applications, and everyone comes in, the review panel takes a look and really recommends multiple, it's possible that maybe we would reach out to you and take a look and see if we could work your proposal for a less amount. But I think I think that's my initial gut reaction. Luke or Tiffany, if you guys have any responses, feel free to chime in too.
Sorry, I took a bite of my sandwich. My apologies. Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to say until we see how many applications we get and what the budget proposals are. So I think we have up to 400,000. So certainly it'll be based on the budget you propose. But it certainly might be less depending on how many folks are awarded. But it doesn't hurt you to ask for the max amount. It won't be like taken against you. And if, you know, I also think ask for a reasonable amount, I guess would be the guidance too, like that you could, because if you could award all of it, something you could actually spend by the end of the year. Thanks, Leanna.
Hi, Melinda here. I have a quick question.
Sure, go ahead. Thank you.
When it says having experience procuring diapers at a large scale, can you define what large scale is?
Yes, that's a good question. You know, I think the goal here is to get diapers out by the end of the year. And I think we just recognize that diaper distribution is not always easy. I think we all here know that it can be challenging, but it's also a very huge need. So I don't think we've actually defined what large scale is, but we are looking for groups who have experience distributing diapers. Luke, do you have any more definitions of large that you would like to share?
No, yeah, I think, does that word actually even appear in the actual text? I think it's experience distributing diapers to the scale that you are proposing. So some folks might be proposing a large geographic scale, or some folks might be proposing to a particular community group that they feel is underreached.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, sorry, it's Liliana. I had another question. I was just wondering, so for instance, my organization, we already distribute diapers on a monthly basis to our clients. So for organizations that maybe are already doing some sort of distribution, would you want us to do more of like a bigger event? Because I know sometimes we do host a little bit of larger events where we give out bread or different things like that. Would that be something that you would want to see from us, or maybe keeping it on like a monthly basis, we just are able to distribute more diapers to the families?
Good question. I think we're really focused on the diapers part. I know sometimes folks do combine distribution of basic needs and you know, events like that where there is a food component and diaper component, but we're really focused on the diaper component here. So if you are looking to just increase your ability to distribute or the number of diapers that you're distributing, I think that would qualify here.
Okay, so just to make sure that I got it right and I understood right, because we do have the ability to like host an event where we give out like a large amount of diapers, like within a weekend or so, or something like that. So you'd be saying more like doing something like that, or increasing the amount that we give them per month. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Again, I'll get back to the chat questions. The question, how is the review panel chosen?
Sure. So the review panel will be a mix of county employees from our department, the Developmental Disability and Early Childhood Support Division, and other divisions across our department. Does that answer your question? Cool.
The next question is, do you have a sense of reporting requirements? Is there a specific database or frequency of reporting?
Yes, this is always a really important question. We really are trying to make this accessible to organizations and not make the reporting requirements overly burdensome. Right now, I think we're anticipating tracking and asking for reports on demographics of communities and individuals served, and the ability to document that kind of COVID need, with that COVID nexus of how we know that these diapers are going to communities and members who have been impacted by COVID. So right now, we don't have a specific database or frequency of reporting. I think that would be worked out during the contract phase.
I will just add that this is sometimes considered reporting, sometimes not, but supporting documentation for expenses will also be a part of the fiscal reporting, sort of a different kind of reporting, but just in case that was part of the question.
Thank you.
Okay, so can you share more, related to the large scale question, can you share more about the evaluation of experience? You encourage small orgs to apply, but must have experience with pallets, forklifts, storage, et cetera. I think the implication there being that those don't seem to match.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I think that we are looking for either of two groups here. We are looking at organizations that distribute diapers directly to their own community members and clients that they may serve. We are also interested in partnering with organizations that may distribute diapers at a much larger scale to other community-based organizations. And so the folks maybe in that category would be the ones who might need, you know, access to their own pallets and forklifts and storage. Because we are looking for distribution of diapers, you know, there is the necessity also to like procure the diapers and store them and then distribute them as well. So I'm imagining that actually for those organizations that partner with other community-based organizations to distribute those diapers, that experience with pallets and forklifts and storage, we put that in there just so that folks would know that those organizations would need to kind of hold those responsibilities as opposed to the county purchasing and storing all of these diapers themselves.
I think I would just add that infrastructure matching the request. So if experience with pallets and forklifts don't apply to someone's request, then it wouldn't be considered.
Okay.
I'll read this next one. For large scale distribution, some organizations have a large network of partners they distribute diapers to, but smaller amounts versus other organizations who distribute to a small network but give out a lot more in quantity of diapers. Is number of partners more important than number of diapers distributed, or are both equally factored in?
Great question. Thanks for bringing that up. I don't think that right now we have factored into the scoring criteria the number of partners or the number of diapers distributed. So I would believe that they would both equally be factored in. But Luke, if you have any additions to that, please share.
No, and I would just add, as Libby said, the rubric is much more detailed in the RFP. It was just like a lot of words for a slideshow, but that has exactly what the reviewers are meant to be basing their 10-point scale score on. So if it's not stated in there, it should be part of the scoring. So that'll give you a really good idea of what is prioritized. Okay. So the next question is, if awarded, is this grant reimbursement or upfront money given to orgs?
Yes, I know that's an important question for everyone. I think this will be flushed out in the contracting phase. Typically, I believe the county does do reimbursement, and typically on a monthly or quarterly basis, rather than upfront funds provided. But I think that would be open to discussion during the contract negotiation phase.
note taking is behind the chat. Excuse me if this is already asked, but will there be one org funded? Maybe I'll let you answer that one first, Libby.
Yeah. There is a possibility that more than one organization would be funded. We are really interested in making sure the entire county is covered. So it's possible that due to geographical distribution or other factors that multiple orgs would be funded. We're working with up to $400,000. So if one org was funded and they asked for 400,000 and they were the highest bidder or the highest scored application, then it would be possible that they would get the full amount. But it is also very possible, depending on the number of applicants and depending on the amounts requested by each applicant, that there will be more than one organization funded here.
Hi, Melinda again. I have a question. And I might have missed it. I was a few minutes late, so I apologize ahead of time if you already addressed this. I am thinking about the people that we are distributing to. Are there any parameters other than like they must be King County residents? Were there other parameters as to who can have them and the amount that they might be able to have or anything like that?
Yeah. I think this was alluded to, and I could have clarified it in the slide deck. We are focusing on folks who have been impacted by COVID. So while there is no, the people we are aiming to serve here are folks who live in King County and who have, been negatively impacted by the pandemic. So as part of our reporting and evaluation, we will be working with organizations and awarded groups to figure out a way to document and to track how diapers ended up going to folks who have been impacted by COVID. Those haven't quite been defined yet. Luke, if you have any experience defining that, I'm happy to share that out too. Does that help, Melinda?
Yes, thank you.
I think I'll just say we have some ideas of how an organization could certify that diapers went to families impacted by COVID, but we didn't want to assume that you didn't have better and easier ideas, or maybe already and so I believe in the application, it sort of asks about your ability to collect this information. And so we just wanted to leave that open. I will there is an option of just having families attest to it, sign a form or something like that. But again, we didn't know if some organizations maybe already have this information, and it would just be, we didn't want to put a burden on. So we were open to, so it's more about we're assessing the ability, but open to, in either your proposals or then in the contracting phase, negotiating how that data is collected and shared. Going back to the chat, there was a question: must diaper partners, so that for orgs that partner with folks, be named in the application?
In terms of naming partners, I don't believe that is a requirement. We do ask about experience partnering with other organizations if that's the route that you will go, but I don't believe that you will need to name who those organizations are.
A question about the budget section. It says in the budget section, one part says do not include the cost of diapers, and then another part includes diapers as a line item. Please clarify.
Good question. As you'll see in the budget tab in Zoom grants, there is a line item for diapers, and that is the line item that we would like groups to enter in the amount that they will be spending from their budget on diapers. But in terms of program expenses and other administrative costs, we would ask that you take the diaper amount out of that. So normally, if you were thinking about this program and writing a budget for it, you may put diapers into your program costs line item, but for the budget purposes of this RFP, we ask that diapers just be separated out and included on that first line all by themselves. Does that clarify? Cool. If it doesn't, feel free to reach out to me via email afterwards, and I can help with that.
Looks like not clarity on that. I don't. Do you have the budget template to maybe to share accessible?
Yes. Let me take a look.
While Libby's bringing that up, if other folks have other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Or if I somehow missed any of your questions in the chat, please point them out to me.
All right, I will go ahead and share my screen here. All right, this is the narrative, the budget and budget narrative question that we have. It looks a little bit different. This is the Word version, but it is mirrored in the Zoom Grants platform. So we're asking that the diaper line item, the amount that you anticipate spending on diapers, get entered into the first line here. Under direct program costs, we ask that you include any costs related with this project, such as licensing fees, materials, supplies, communications, transportation, marketing, building rent, etc., and that you include in this line the amount for those items. But for purposes of this budget, the cost of diapers will not end up in this line item under direct program costs. They should be listed above on the diaper line. Does that help?
Certainly, always welcome to reach out to Libby directly. Oh, great. Jessica said thank you.
Cool.
There's always the delay in the chat.
No worries.
Thank you for sharing your screen, Libby.
Yeah.
So I got one more. It says, is this grant for 1 year? How much is awarded? You could review that.
Yep, happy to review. The award period for this will be through the end of 2022. So through the end of this December, it works out to be about 8 months of funding, and the max award would be $400,000. Again, it may be divided between multiple organizations depending on the number of applicants and the amounts requested. All right, I'm willing to stick around and answer any more questions if folks have them. You can, of course, reach out to me via email. My email was in the chat, and I'm also available to stick around if anybody else has any more questions. Feel free to chime in or email me after today.
And I'll just again state, Libby said that we took notes on all these questions, so they will be posted in a document that will be added to the Zoom grants on a frequently asked questions. So with typed out answers, if anyone needs to reference that. And then that'll be periodically updated if anyone emails in any questions, just so you can all get the same information.
Thanks, Luke.
Just making sure the vaccine mandate that you touched on is the evidence of vaccination is just for those that are doing the direct delivery to the population. Is that correct? Or is it like the entire entity?
That's a good question. Right now, the mandate orders all contractors to be fully vaccinated before beginning work if the organization will be providing on-site services on county property or in county facilities, or if they will be providing services requiring interaction with the general public. So I can get you more information related to who needs to be vaccinated, whether it's the people providing the services directly to the public, or if it's the administrative staff and other folks at the organization who may not be providing those services. Luke, if you know, feel free to chime in, but I can absolutely follow up with you on the details of that, Melinda.
I want to say something, and Tiffany, you correct me if I'm wrong. So Melinda, no, it is not the entire organization. And as Libby said, it would only be particular staff members who fall into those categories. I think in this one, the likely category would be interacting face-to-face with the public. So if your organization does not do that as part of, so likely somebody is maybe handing these diapers to someone. And so they would be those staff members, but not anyone who isn't on this program. I will say, and you don't turn in like your staff members' vaccine cards. Just to clarify, your agency signs an attestation form just saying that you are in compliance. But we are not in the business of collecting those cards from your staff. So you would just sign saying you're in compliance for applicable staff members. And potentially any partners or subcontractors for folks who are partnering with folks. So, and again, we could talk more details for awardees in the contracting phase, but yeah, just to make sure it's not the entire organization.
That's good. Thank you. Yeah, I was like, that's what kind of crossed my mind. I was imagining like, do we all have to pull out our cards again? But that makes it so much easier. Okay, sorry about that. Thanks.
No worries.
Tiffany, did you want to add anything on that end?
No, that's right. So the attestation form covers the org, and the executive order applies to the workers that are working directly with the general public. And I'll just paste a link into the chat for the vaccine mandate for contractors website that we have. There's an FAQ on there with updated information. That could be helpful.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Got another question in about when, and maybe I'll add to it, where will the recording of this be posted?
Good question. The recording should be posted by the end of this week into Zoom Grants. If you go into the library tab, there will be a file there that we will post the recording to.
Libby?
Yes.
This is Britton from Babies of Homelessness. I think I have a question, trying to form my thoughts, but I'm thinking in terms of equity and application processes, especially for smaller organizations, organizations that don't have kind of this army of grant writers. If the organization is led by a marginalized community, it tends to have a smaller budget, but they need that funding to really set up the infrastructure. Is the review panel willing to take a big investment on that smaller organization? They'll look at the budget and they say, well, it looks small, so we're only going to give them, 10 to 20%. Is the review panel willing to take a larger investment in some of these small organizations, many of which are marginalized, led by marginalized communities? I don't know if that was a question, but I guess I'm just trying to say, like, is there any consideration in terms of equity in the application process for all the applicants?
Good question, Britton. Thanks for asking that. I think if you were to take a look at the rating criteria in the RFP, it has a much more detailed approach to how applications will be scored. There is a section on the equity and social justice section and how those are defined, and how applications will be reviewed and held by that. But we understand that smaller organizations have, may have less bandwidth and less fancy grant writing, and may have smaller budgets that they're working with. So we are keeping in mind that there will be a mix of large organizations and small organizations and community-based organizations applying for this funding.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Libby.
Thanks, Britton.
Just going to add that, Libby, the budget narrative section you added, and Britton, I want to acknowledge your also comment that like don't have fancy grant writers, and so all of this is work, but could be a place to explain. Like part of what I heard in your question was like our budget might look a little different for a small organization because of different factors, and so in that budget narrative is a way to explain some of those line items with a justification from an equity perspective that you think is appropriate. Again, it's hard for us to answer any questions because we don't, the review panel is their own entity, and but yeah, I think those are places that'll be good to include that information for them.
All right, it looks like some folks are dropping off and hopping back to work. I'll stick around for a couple minutes until the room totally empties. But thanks so much for joining us today and for helping us get diapers out. We know families really need them right now. Hope you guys have a great day.